Well, good afternoon to you, Scott Baker. I think we've got a little bit of a weird one here today.
Yes, the field note. Welcome, by the way, everyone, to Lead Better live here for Friday afternoon, the 15th of August, 2025. And our field note is entitled Leaders Who Attention Bomb. And it's not that they fail at giving attention, it's that they're just doing a whole lot of it toward one person at a time.
Yes. So the reason that it feels a little weird to me that it's brought up in the context of this field note is because I've been doing a lot of reading and listening here recently to cults and the methodology of how cults do their recruiting. And so it was back in the 90s that it was first identified that a church back in the 70s actually coined the term for themselves as to the way that they would actively go out and recruit members by showing them all kinds of extraordinary love and affection in the early stages of them visiting their organization would be love bombing them.
Yes,
Now,
right.
and love bombing is something that a lot of people, when they hear about it, and then when they hear about it in the cultic practices, they assume that it's just a sexual thing. But even back in the day that these churches, these so-called churches that were still using it at the time, were using this particular tactic, they weren't necessarily over-sexualizing the behavior. Sometimes,
Sure, right. No, it was in the good sense. I mean, well,
Right.
we're not ascribing good motives. We're
Yes.
saying that the definition of love bombing was to show care, to show interest, to show a real genuine warmth.
Yes, especially to people who may not have had that in their home situations.
Sure.
In their home lives growing up. So oftentimes they were looking for people that were disaffected youth or
Right.
youth that didn't have a strong connection with their mom and dad. And obviously the strongest and fastest way to create that connection was everyone in the community would really surround this person and love bomb them. And so whether
And
or
so
not,
that person would say, "Oh, wow, I have finally found my people."
exactly, right. And so those cults would actually call it love bombing. It wasn't recognized as a tactic until like 25 years later when
Sure.
psychologists
Well, yeah.
started writing about it. And then they would pull it back out through the interviews of those who were former members of the cults that this is what they would do. So
Yeah.
love bombing became a thing in the 90s that was flirted around by psychiatrists and psychologists who were writing these books as a specific tactic. And so the tactic itself had a really negative connotation surrounding the idea of what love bombing is, except
Right.
for the fact that you kind of pointed it out. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a negative thing.
No. I think most of the world's religions are ostensibly built on the idea that you would have care and love in a community of some sort where that would be expressed in some reciprocal manner, and you'd all sort of spiral upward in your elevation of humanity. That would be a good thing.
It would be, except for the fact that the first time, like I was raised in a non-denominational, independent, non-denomination. The first time I visited excuse me for saying, I won't even say it because of a stodgy denominational church. I was surprised how few people actually came up and introduced themselves. It was even friendly and like there was no attempt to use this tactic as a way to
Welcome. Yeah. We're so glad. Where are you from? Tell me about yourself. Right?
Yeah. So there was only if I remember correctly, there was only one person. And he said to me, "Oh, were you raised in this tradition?" Right? And almost to like ask whether or not am I in the in group or the out group. It wasn't at all like my tradition. It doesn't matter where you were from. It was like this
all the better. Yeah.
love bombing kind of tactic that kind of came up.
Well, let me ask you a question then. So you can have love bombing as the cult tactic. You can have love bombing as genuine, authentic community. There's all kinds of intentional communities, religious, otherwise, where this kind of thing has been practiced. Now, we also know intuitively, and we're going to get to this point of understanding how does this happen in the workplace and in organizations?
Right.
I have certainly seen it done by leaders in organizations where they do get fixated on the new person, the person that just came in that's a genius, and they're sort of a flavor of the month. And we all kind of have a little bit of probably our own temptations towards that. And so we'll sort through this. But we also kind of, I think, before you would go, like I wasn't going to go right to the cult example necessarily for whatever complicated psychological reasons Mikey has. I was going to say
the terminology is there. That's where it came from.
I was just going to go to, we all know this from the dating relationship or the trope of the romantic who is so besotted and they just sort of bomb their intention of their love with so much. Now, and in those circumstances, it doesn't work out like we're talking about in the field note because usually people recoil, right? But yet somehow in these work relationships, that whether it's the athletic coach or the organizational coach, if they are showing you particular interest and they're like really seeking you out, elevating you above the other people, you do feel special, right?
You do.
And
you don't even know to push back on it that it's an odd thing. Like even in some of these other social organizations that we talk about, we're suspect of it. I don't know why that initial suspicion doesn't pop up in the workplace as easily. It doesn't. Though.
Well, and I suppose if you're new in the organization, you may think, oh, this is really nice how they bring new people in. And so it takes you a while to realize, oh, the other people on the team resent me for this.
Right.
Or they're rolling their eyes because they know 3 weeks from now, the leader's going to move on to the next person or the next thing. So I guess the question is, one, how do you handle it if a leader is love bombing you and you happen to be so self-aware? That would be a wonderful thing if you could be like, all right, I got to navigate this and make this a little better. And probably people in romantic relationships are, how do I get this person to stop bothering me?
Right.
Or I used to like them, but now it's getting a little creepy, right? Now we actually have to get the leader to be self-aware. Oh, I have a tendency towards this.
Yes.
And so I need to check myself.
Yes. So I know that I don't mean to use cults as a proxy, but I think there's some information here because these psychologists who have done this work have actually done like, what are the phases of love bombing? And
there are actual phases.
Yes. And so the phases is it's an acronym that's called IDD. So the first phase is intense idealization of the subject.
Okay. Right.
The second phase is devaluation. And then third phase is to discard them. And then it repeats after that. And so
here's the person that's going to come in and really make our organization. Then it's like, yeah, they're great. Yeah, and I'm sure they'll be fine. And then later it's like, we probably shouldn't have hired them in the first place. Is that sort of it?
Well, that Dale Archer identifies this specifically inside the cults, but I see the pattern being very much the same. So I don't know that we would have the exact same acronym, but I think the acronym fits for the way that we've been talking about it inside the workplace as it would be inside of a cult as well. And so aside from those three phases being something that you can identify inside of a cult of what love bombing is, and I think the person who authored this for us today probably had attention bombing as a way to kind of like springboard off of what love bombing is. But there's also a process by which you can identify the behavioral pattern with another acronym that Dale Archer, the same author, came up with. And that is to stop and look and listen. And after which, breaking off the contact from the abuser when you just pay attention to what they're doing. Like stop, look, and listen to what they're doing.
Sure.
And then that way you don't have the same kind of value on the flattery that has come at you that you might normally just accept and be like, oh, this is fantastic, right? No, if you're actually taking time, and we actually had someone in the comments today say, you know, when this type of thing happens to you, actually it was an X thread, and they were writing from the perspective of a financial organization, right? They're saying, I've seen this over and over again with traders. So we were brought in and we were the hotness, right? And it's important. And I was like, well,
did they use the word the hotness really?
No, it was something like that. I won't take time to look it up again. But then I asked, you know, is there something about financial institutions, hedge funds, that actually makes this kind of behavior like more prevalent than other organizations? Like, is there something about leaders inside of hedge funds that would make
Maybe.
them more likely? And they say the transactional, kind of notion of the organization actually probably increases this. And the way that he said he saw it over and over again, they would accept the flattery. At the end of the day, they'd go out to their car, they'd sit and they'd just think, and they'd be like, yeah, that's what that was, right? And so they were just talking about it, the fact that this like key identification of what this behavior was really important for them not to take it too personally. And it fits right in with the way that you do it inside of cults as well. Stop, look, and listen.
Right.
After which you break off contact with the abuser, right? And I'm not saying your boss is the abuser here, because this is actually written for the boss's sake. How do you recognize that you might be using some of these tactics and kind of distance yourself from it? And why should you distance yourself from it? Is because you might not even realizing your credibility is in the toilet if you're using this tactic over and over again. You might think, oh, this is a great way to welcome somebody to the team, but you're actually lowering your own credibility in the process.
Well, we had a field note the other day about people who are very utilitarian. And so a lot of people come into an organization and be like, I'm getting all the attention. I'm going to take advantage of this while it lasts, right?
Yeah.
Now, I have some simple thoughts that might just resolve this, and then nobody has to be too worried about it. But I'll double down and say, wait, it's not just the traders, right? Because, we might want to hijack one trader from one company and hire him over here and give him a big pay package. But we're watching this happen right now. Yeah. And here's how it happens. Somebody who's in charge of a huge organization that's got, billions and billions and billions of dollars will say, I think that this person is the AI genius. How much let me see if I could give them let me see if I could give them $10 billion to come join our organization. And so there's been a little discussion around the internet around, are people worth billions of dollars? And I think one of the deals was like for $15 billion, and they get the company, but they really are getting the person and their small team. Right. So we're bombing you with billions of dollars. So that's crazy. And look, we don't obviously get political and just, we're talking religion and politics and everything else in this one. Goodness gracious.
Great one.
Right. But look, imagine a scenario where, let's just pretend, totally hypothetically, that you're the leader of a world country. And let's say that you have a new friend who has the most money of anybody on that particular planet. Pick a planet in the universe. And all of a sudden, maybe you're bombing each other with love. Like there's all this attention. And then what happens if that IDD thing happens, where all of a sudden it gets devalued and discarded? And then everybody's like, well, wait a minute, what happened? We liked it when everybody was together. Why don't mom and dad like each other anymore? Whatever it is. So in the end, I think there's a natural part of this, which is if you're the head of a sports organization or a trading desk and you get some new talent in, you're going to celebrate that. And it's actually good for the rest of the team. People want to work with winners. We want to work with A players want to play with A players. So you do want to bring them in. There's going to be some of that. You're going to have the hot new rookie that comes into training camp, whatever that is. And the leader just has to say, yeah, I'm going to enjoy this. In fact, it's not I'm not like productizing it, but it's okay if you got a new car or if you collect tennis shoes and you're like, I'm going to wear these for the next couple of weeks. Yeah. You know that you're going to move on. The key is you got to go around to all the other pairs of shoes and say, still love you, right? So a team member, whether an athletic team, a work team, a nonprofit team, whatever, the leader can be like, I'm so excited this person is here. I'm going to be spending extra time with them.
Yes.
But you need to communicate to everybody else in a consistent, authentic way that we talk about in Admired Leadership all the time, that they're all there's no difference in how you are a fan of this new person. Yes. You're equally a fan of the people that are on your team. And you have to make sure you're demonstrating that. And then I think it all goes away.
Yeah, you can't talk about this without bringing up the framework of fanness, which is what Scott is referencing here. But fanness is something that you can see on our site. There's a video on YouTube that we have that kind of outlines what it is. And it's a brilliant framework, but it does bring up the question, like, I don't want my fanness to rotate. Just because it's a genius that's coming in the door and I'm really impressed with them, doesn't mean that the person who's not a genius, who does mediocre work, who you want to do better work, they're actually the person who needs your fanness more, right?
Yeah, right.
This is the secret to motivation and inspiration that a lot of people don't leverage. So the real question of an admired leader is to be like, how am I genuinely acting like a fan to 150 people at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And it might be very difficult, right? And this is another reason why you can only have so many direct reports, right? The capacity to truly act as a fan to so many people at a time, and not just the new person, is an obligation that any great leader should be able to carry on for a long, long time. Even the people who, especially the people who are failing you, which is referenced in that video, right? If you're a Phillies fan, the time that it really counts is when the team is losing, right?
Which is most of the time.
Well, and it's kind of right now.
10,000 games they've lost.
Yeah. So
that's not a made up figure. That's true.
And 10,000 and growing this season as well. So, but what we need here is this notion of like, how do we adopt behaviors where not you're intentionally spreading out? It's not really about fairness in your fanness, but it is about recognizing that it doesn't even come across like this bombing way we're describing that.
Yeah. And by the way, just for the record, so I don't get anybody commenting on my X account, I'm over here in Pittsburgh, so we don't make fun of any city for their losing baseball team. But, it's like we all have our dysfunctional relationships. So.
Yes, you've got existential issues yourself there.
All right, shall we, Mikey Ames, do this again tomorrow?
Yes,
in
absolutely.
which we talk about other kinds of leadership bad behavior.
Yes, code words in particular. I look forward to talking to you about it.
All right, see ya.